If you're looking for a fic that beautifully weaves together the threads of angst, love, and hope, look no further than If You Loved Me, Why'd You Leave Me by Amythecinnabunny. This story is a gripping exploration of grief and determination, as Nakajima Atsushi grapples with the loss of his partner, Akutagawa Ryunosuke. The story dives into an emotional journey as Atsushi turns to the mysterious page for help, unraveling more than he ever expected. Set in a fascinating array of alternate universes, from royalty and magic to music and the apocalypse, this fic provides a rich tapestry of settings and scenarios that keep the reader engaged. The author masterfully handles heavy themes such as grief, mourning, and the 5 stages of grief, while also sprinkling moments of fluff and domesticity that offer a reprieve from the intense emotions. With its detailed character portrayals, particularly of a Nakajima Atsushi who is alternately a Port Mafia member, a knight, and a pianist, the fic promises a deep and rewarding read. The relationship dynamics are compelling, especially between Atsushi and Akutagawa, and the story's blend of canon divergence and post-series events will satisfy any fan of the series. The writing is poignant and heartfelt, capturing the pain of loss and the hope of finding peace. The warning of major character death is prominent, but the angst is balanced with a hopeful ending that makes the journey worthwhile. This 63,620-word fic, completed in a mere 2 days, is a testament to the author's skill and passion. Join the hundreds of readers who have left kudos and comments, and dive into this emotional roller coaster. Just remember to keep tissues handy. Amythecinnabunny knows how to tug at your heartstrings in the best possible way. This one was really tough to pick out favorite moments, because I am so in love with this whole fic. As my followers over on the Clock app know, I made a video praising it. So, forgive me for overindulging I did here. Amythecinnabunny has several works in this series, as you may have noticed already, as they have become one of my favorite writers on AO3. I cannot stress this enough. This fic is absolute perfection.
I tell a lie 9 times out of 10, 'cause they always leave like the wind.
Atsushi doesn't look away from the stars when he hears footsteps on the rooftop. Excited for Dazai to return tomorrow, are you? I am. It means you lot will go back to your little mafia apartments, and our sleeping arrangements can go back to normal. I much prefer Kyoka's company to yours, though Jin isn't so bad. Akutagawa sits down beside Atsushi. We never really talked about it, you know. I fear we may never get the chance, if not now. Atsushi turns his head to look at the back of Akutagawa's, watching him tilt his head backwards to study the stars. It's odd to see him without a coat. It's also nice. Why? We worked well together, did we not? We could certainly work together again. Plus, there are places in Yokohama where the line blurs enough that we may meet. I do not mean that we will not meet again, Jinko. I mean that I fear I may not live once this curse is lifted. Atsushi sits up. Can't Bram? My sister asked already. Akutagawa shakes his head. In the time it will take for the nullification from Dazai's ability to fade so that the Count may use his ability again, I will die. There has to be something we can do. What if Bram lifts the ability himself, and then... Akutagawa shakes his head again. My sister asked on that as well. Doing so would take far too much energy. He would be fine, but he would not be conscious to turn me once again. Can't he? He cannot single me out. Atsushi scowls. Could you at least look at me when you tell me you're going to die tomorrow? Akutagawa scoffs. Why? So your righteousness can consume you. So my face can haunt your dreams as you ask yourself why you didn't do more, why you didn't try harder. I am not your friend, but I cannot find it in me to be so cruel to you. Atsushi glares at Akutagawa. There has to be something that can be done, the page. No. Akutagawa glares so fiercely at Atsushi that Atsushi recoils slightly. Akutagawa's gaze tracks the motion, and he relaxes, sitting back calmly. No. If you are so determined to do something, you can search to your heart's content. But I do not want you rewriting my existence. But it could help. It could save you. It could even fix your sick condition. It would change who I am. My own sister wouldn't recognize me. You wouldn't know me. But more importantly, using that thing for your own selfish desires would make you no better than the man who is the reason I will die tomorrow. Atsushi feels like every taut string holding him together and upright, like a puppeteer's good tool, has snapped. His shoulders sag. His posture turns to a slouch. He drops his head down. "I'm sorry," he whispers. "Don't be," Akutagawa says uncharacteristically kindly. "You're a hero, the kind that makes me sick. You'd lay your head on a guillotine if it meant saving one life, even a worthless one. Because you don't think there's such a thing as worthless life unless it is your own you're talking about. I can't fault you for wanting to find a way out. That's just who you are." "What am I supposed to do?" Atsushi asks in a small voice, burying his face in his knees. "Mourn me, if you are capable of such a thing." "And then? Dazai wanted us to work together. He wanted us to build something like he did, but better. What am I supposed to do when my partner is dead?" Akutagawa hums. "You will have Kyoka." "That's different and you know it," Atsushi snaps, lifting his head somewhat to glare at Akutagawa. "She's my best friend. I could never fight her with a clean conscience." "Ah," Atsushi scoffs. "I can't believe you think I won't mourn you." Akutagawa shrugs. "I haven't exactly been the most pleasant company. Not before Fukuchi, no, but these few days have been good. I would have missed you even if the furthest you went was to your own home." "I see." Atsushi, his arms wrapped around his knees, looks upwards to stare at the stars. "Would Dazai delay undoing the vampirism to give me a chance to find something?" Atsushi can feel Akutagawa's gaze on him, but he keeps his own on the stars. They're easier to look at. They don't ask questions. Prolonging the inevitable won't make it hurt any less. Atsushi sighs. "Would you indulge me for tonight, then?" "Indulge you how?" Atsushi shuffles for a bit before he lays his head in Akutagawa's lap. "Treat me like you care about me. Lie to me if you must." Akutagawa hums. "So, we aren't going to talk about it after all." Atsushi closes his eyes when he feels a hand on his head. "What's there to talk about? You saved my life. I owe you." Akutagawa doesn't try to argue. "Maybe I'll turn you into my personal assistant for a week to clear your debt." Atsushi chuckles at the suggestion that, on another day, would have made him pissed enough to want to hit Akutagawa. A personal assistant, huh? "A glorified position, really," Akutagawa says airily. He's playing with Atsushi's hair now. "I will have you tend to my apartment and do my errands and take the fall for anything I do that may anger Jin." Atsushi laughs. "I've already been doing all of that ever since the whole circus came to the dorms. It's gotten to a point where Jin doesn't even believe me when it is my fault." Akutagawa huffs. "Then I'll find another way to clear your debt. You'll have to give me a few days to think about it." "They don't have a few days." Akutagawa doesn't, that is. He doesn't have more than a full day. But Atsushi asked Akutagawa to lie to him. "If, Akutagawa hums when Atsushi doesn't go on. "If I can convince Dazai to delay the nullification by 1 day, will you allow me to try and make your last day a good day?" Akutagawa doesn't answer for a long moment. Before he speaks, he huffs in bitter amusement. "You really are a masochist, aren't you?" "How so?" "What is this for, A good last day. I will be dead. It won't matter to me." "It'll matter to me." "I know. I can't fathom why. Others would have distanced themselves if they cared for a dying one, to make it hurt less." Atsushi is quiet for a moment. "Others would have a good supply of nice memories of the dying one. I have 3. Those will hardly carry me through the rest of my life." "Masochist," Akutagawa says, But Atsushi can't find the bite in the word when Akutagawa says it almost fondly as he twists Atsushi's hair around his fingers. It should be a strange thing to be sharing his little wood table with the Akutagawa siblings instead of Kyoka, but it feels pretty normal. Something he could get used to. But Dazai is returning today. Atsushi won't have the chance to properly get used to any of this. They eat in silence, as the siblings prefer, and then they take turns with the bathroom. The world is waiting for the curse to be lifted. In the end, he doesn't need to ask. It's Chuya that tells everyone to back off, to give Dazai space, to give him a day before he's made to use his ability again. It's pure bullshit. Dazai's ability is always alive, thrumming beneath his skin. It's not like most others that need to be summoned and will take up energy. But Atsushi is the first to step back, despite having wanted to hug Dazai so badly, mostly because he saw the look Dazai gave him. It's definitely bullshit. It's that Dazai knows what'll happen to Akutagawa. It's that Chuya knows what Dazai will want to do. Atsushi gives Dazai a grateful nod, then grabs Jin's arm and pulls them to the door. Akutagawa naturally follows. None of them heed the questions about where they're going. "Where are we going?" Jin asks, which is tantamount to how much they trust Atsushi, given that they let themselves be dragged away by him not knowing where to or why. "Out," Atsushi says. "Just out." Jin glances back at their brother. "The three of us?" Atsushi doesn't sugarcoat things with Jin. He's learned quickly in this short time that Jin doesn't appreciate it. So he looks at them and nods. "I'm not going to exclude you on your brother's last day." "Oh, Dazai knew," Akutagawa mutters, stopping on the sidewalk outside the agency doors. Jin and Atsushi pause and watch Akutagawa turn to look up at the windows. They both follow his gaze up to find that Dazai stands at the window despite the way he'd practically hobbled into the office on a crutch, and Chuya, watching them. To Atsushi's absolute mortification, Akutagawa very aggressively gives Dazai a middle finger. Atsushi watches Dazai's face break into a smile so real it almost hurts. It's only thanks to his ability that he hears Dazai laugh, and oh wow, Dazai's laugh is delightful when it's real. "What was that?" Jin asks as Dazai turns away from the window, presumably to dismiss whoever asked him what he's laughing at. Akutagawa shuffles from one foot to the other. It's a little nice to see him behave like the 20-year-old kid he never got the chance to be. "I've sort of always wanted to tell Dazai to fuck off. I figure it should be okay now. I won't have to face any consequences. Shall we?" They continue on their way, and when Atsushi glances back at the window, Dazai waves. "I must say, Jinko," Akutagawa mutters as they peruse the bookshelves, "I expected something more. Active." Atsushi scoffs. "You're the one about to die. I figure your last day should be things you enjoy." Akutagawa pulls a book off the shelf and opens the front cover before shutting it and pointing at Atsushi with it. "And what gave you the idea that this is something I'd enjoy?" Jin complained a bit about how much they miss their games, which are on a shelf on one side of the TV because your book collection is on the other side. No one keeps a book collection unless books are something they love. To read or to own is irrelevant. You like books. Akutagawa raises the book in his hand slightly. "And what happens if I buy this? It will go into the shelf and then what?" Atsushi takes the book from him and looks at the cover. "I'll read it. You hate reading. I hear you talk to Tachihara and the detective version of Tachihara." Atsushi rolls his eyes at Akutagawa's choice of referral to Tanizaki. "Maybe I'll read it to you at your grave. Do you think your soul will sit and listen?" Akutagawa stares at Atsushi. "Maybe I'll read all your books, one by one, to you at your grave." "Why?" Atsushi tilts his head. "Because I'm going to miss you. I'm going to miss you a lot. I don't know what I am separate from you." That sounds awfully like a cheesy romance novel. Atsushi chuckles. "I guess. But I mean it. Ever since my life turned around, Since I met Dazai and joined the agency, you have been there. You've tried to kill me, you've worked with me, you've saved my life. I don't know what exactly you are to me, but you're important. I'm gonna miss you, Akutagawa. Akutagawa turns back to the shelf and selects a different book. He shows it to Atsushi. It's far thinner than the other novel. This one, he says. Read this one to me tonight. Then tomorrow night, read the first chapter of that one to my grave. I will listen. If Jin had been eavesdropping from a different aisle, they give no indication of it when they come up behind Atsushi and show him the book they chose. I want to get this, they say. That's in Braille, Akutagawa says. Yes, I want to teach Tachihara to read Braille. Why? Jin shrugs. If undoing the vampire ability in you will revert you to your state prior to it, then Tachihara might share the same fate. He was blinded before. So tomorrow, if that's what happens, I want to start teaching him to read Braille. Oh, Atsushi says. He pats Jin's head like they're a toddler. You're so sweet. Jin scrunches their nose up and squeezes their eyes shut, but Atsushi knows they don't mind. He asked the first time. Jin claimed to be afraid of heights, utter bullshit, in Atsushi's opinion, so Atsushi and Akutagawa ride the Cosmo clock without them. What do you think Jin's up to? Atsushi asks as their capsule begins to rise. Probably wandering around the stalls or thinking about what's for dinner. Akutagawa turns to the view, watching the amusement park slowly get smaller and smaller. If it weren't for Jin, I would have accused you of attempting to take me out on a date. Atsushi huffs in amusement and watches the twinkling lights too. You're not going to deny it? Atsushi doesn't say anything. Jinko, Akutagawa says, sounding very slightly afraid. Deny it. Ah, Atsushi sighs, stretching out on his bench like a cat before looking at Akutagawa. He smiles sheepishly. You caught me. Jinko, Akutagawa says pleadingly, this isn't right. When is anything ever right when it comes to you? Things are either nice or painful, but very rarely right. Let me have this. You can't. This is ridiculous. As is everything with the two of us. I know called you a masochist yesterday, but this is... Why are you doing this? I don't like regret, Atsushi says. It's not so much fun. I don't want to regret not trying this out. Besides, it's safe. Even if you have only rejection to give me, it can't hurt worse than your death tomorrow. Atsushi stands when their capsule reaches half the height of the Ferris wheel and walks to the edge, staring at Yokohama while the lights reflect on the glass. He pointedly ignores his reflection and the one that silently joins him. I don't know what love is, Atsushi says quietly. Not really. But I think this can be classified as it. You drive me insane and you make me want to throw you into oncoming traffic, but the thought of burying you makes me... Atsushi breaks off, unable to finish the thought. The delusion was nice while it lasted. Why must you hurt yourself like this? Akutagawa asks. It's no fun for me when you do it. Atsushi chuckles. Sorry, I can't let you have everything even if it is your last day. You want to pretend? Akutagawa asks. Pretend like tomorrow won't be any different from yesterday? Atsushi looks at Akutagawa's reflection. They're nearly at the top now. If you weren't dying tomorrow, I don't think you'd be this patient with me. You'd be surprised, Akutagawa says. You get on my last nerve a lot. I have great patience when it comes to you. Yeah, all right. Let's pretend. Is this our first date? Atsushi turns to look at Akutagawa properly when he feels Akutagawa hesitantly brush his hand against Atsushi's. Don't be shy, Atsushi says. He grabs Akutagawa's hand and laces their fingers together. You'd really take my hand if this were a normal day? Dazai asked me to protect you, Akutagawa says. He told me to do whatever it took. But in the moment, when it finally came down to it, I didn't do it for him. Atsushi squeezes Akutagawa's hand. Akutagawa squeezes his hand back. Their capsule begins its descent. "Can I say something mean?" Atsushi asks. Atsushi leans his head towards Akutagawa, a little surprised when Akutagawa leans his head against Atsushi's. It would be cute, if not for the impending doom tomorrow. "I don't want you to go." Akutagawa is silent for a while, and Atsushi wonders if he's overstepped. "Can I say something meaner?" Akutagawa asks. "I don't want to go." They stay like that until their capsule reaches the ground again. When they get off the Ferris wheel, Jin doesn't give any indication that they've noticed Atsushi and Akutagawa's entwined hands. They both know better than to think Jin hasn't noticed. When Atsushi comes to, it's to the barrel of a gun against his forehead. That would be the most important thing to focus on, if not for who is holding the gun to his head. Has Dazai touching the page sent Atsushi back in time somewhat? "You're alive," Atsushi breathes, a little distracted to notice the baffled look he gets for that. "Akutagawa," Kunikida says, "put the gun down, or I'm seriously going to put your firearm license in Haruno's paper shredder." Atsushi knows he's in the agency's main office. He knows this place like the back of his hand. But it's off. Something is different. Not to mention, Kunikida seems friendly with Akutagawa. Speaking of, Akutagawa's clothes are not what Atsushi is used to. They're lighter, more greys than black. He wears a coat again, but it's lighter. Atsushi's own clothes surprise him. A fur-collared coat. Sounds sweltering. "How did you get into our office, Reaper?" "Reaper? That's new. Wait." Atsushi tilts his head. "You work here?" Akutagawa huffs, annoyed. "Did leaving the Port Mafia make you stupid as well as irritating?" There's a lot to unpack there, but Atsushi thinks there's only one logical conclusion he can come to. Dazai touching the page has sent Atsushi into a different reality. It's the only thing that makes sense. "Akutagawa," Kunikida says insistently. "Gun." Glaring at Atsushi, Akutagawa lifts the gun towards the ceiling. "You're right. I should have skewered him on sight." "I'm not a fan of being skewered, actually," Atsushi snaps, shoving Akutagawa lightly so he has space to get up. "I like my blood to stay inside at all times." Akutagawa studies him for a second, his gaze lingering on the page Atsushi still holds. Then he grabs Atsushi by his collar. "I'll take my break now, Kunikida." "No violence," Kunikida shouts as Akutagawa marches Atsushi to the door. "No promises," Akutagawa shouts back. Instead of leading Atsushi down to the cafe, he goes up to the rooftop. He shoves Atsushi against the wall adjacent to the door. "Explain." "Wow," Atsushi says, staring at the narrowed eyes boring into him. "I've never seen your eyes so bright." "I have neither the time nor the energy for your games, stranger. Who are you and what have you done with the Wettiger?" Atsushi tilts his head. "You can tell?" "Answer the question." "Fine. I don't know what happened to him, but I can only assume I've taken his place." "Taken his place?" Akutagawa's gaze drops to the page in Atsushi's hand. Is that?" "From the book, yes. For what it's worth, I didn't mean to come here. I only meant to use it back in my world. But Dazai tried to take it from me, and when he touched it, well, here I am." "The man in black is alive in your world?" Atsushi doesn't like the sound of that. A world where Akutagawa is alive but Dazai isn't. He doesn't like it. Akutagawa scoffs. He lets go of Atsushi's collar. "Don't look so crestfallen, stranger. The you of this world hates him as much as I do. He was ruthless and unkind and cruel." "He's not like that where I'm from," Atsushi says quietly. "He risked his life to save the world." Akutagawa rolls his eyes. "How noble. He flung himself off a building supposedly in the name of protecting this one. Left you and I to take care of it. I'm going to need the White Reaper back." Atsushi tilts his head. "You don't like me very much, do you?" "I don't like you or him at all. But he is the only other person alive that knows about the book. I prefer the version of you that does not speak to me and simply does what was asked of him." Atsushi nods. "Very well. Then I do not want to stay here and replace him. Really? All because I don't like him? If I'm going to get trapped in another world, I'd ideally like it to be one where you still love me. Akutagawa looks at him for a moment, and Atsushi wonders what he's thinking. Has it startled him? Should Atsushi have been more subtle about it? Maybe. Ew. Wow, Atsushi says, deadpan. Charmer, aren't you? Akutagawa looks physically sick. Here's an idea. Why don't you help me figure out how to make this thing work? Atsushi holds up the page. My initial plan was to seek Dazai out, but that seems to be a dead end. Akutagawa snorts. Did you just... That wasn't supposed to be funny. Atsushi rolls his eyes. Whatever. The faster you help me leave, the quicker you can get your Atsushi back. Ew, don't say it like that. One more ew out of you and I'm going to push you off a... Atsushi breaks off, visions of a corpse swimming before his eyes. Twice he had to watch Akutagawa die, and now, here he is, arguing with Akutagawa. It just felt natural. It felt normal. It felt good to bicker with him. You're very odd, Akutagawa says. I will help you, though. Like I said, I prefer the you of this world. Atsushi nods and doesn't say anything. It's only just settling in that though this is still Akutagawa, Ryunosuke, this is not his Akutagawa. This is not an Akutagawa that will go to Cosmo World with him and ride the Ferris wheel and hold his hand. He wants his Akutagawa back. During mid-afternoon, other customers visited the cafe in Atsushi, itching for something to do, asked the owner if he'd like a hand. It kept him occupied for 3 hours before the customers turned to a trickle and the cafe emptied out again. Atsushi is sitting at the counter with a cup of tea, a gift from the owner, given that Atsushi has no money on him, when a stranger sits down beside him. You don't recognize me, the strange states. Atsushi tilts his head. I don't. I take it that must mean I'm not with the agency in your world. I wonder what I do in your world. Who are you? Oda Sakunosuke. Atsushi thinks the name sounds familiar, but he can't place it. You know, Oda continues, sometimes I wonder if the man in black was from a different world too. The man in Dazai. Well, maybe. I'm not sure how things like this work. Maybe there are thousands of worlds, and in one of them, the ability that sent me here got Dazai instead. It's not really a lie, Atsushi thinks. It was Dazai's ability coming into contact with the page that sent him here. Maybe, in another version of reality, Dazai had been the only one to touch the page. But it doesn't really matter to Atsushi. He just wants to get back so he can do what he intended, so he can find a way to bring Akutagawa back. He seemed to know me, Oda says. He was so childlike for a moment, like an abandoned child, desperate for affection, and just like that, it clicks. He's never heard Oda's name before, but it was engraved on a headstone that Atsushi found Dazai at once. That must have been awkward, Atsushi says, to a degree, but it was also pitiful. The boss of the port mafia, just a child who wants someone to care about him. Atsushi hums. I think Dazai's like that in my world too. He's better though, because a lot of us care about him. Sometimes it just seems like he wants someone to hug him and tell him everything's going to be okay. He's a detective in my world. He and Kunikida brought me to the agency. A detective, Oda muses. It's difficult to imagine that. Do you find it difficult to imagine him being the port mafia's boss? Atsushi scoffs. Not in the slightest. Dazai's one of the scariest men I know. If there's anyone that could take the port mafia from Mori, it's him. He was port mafia in my world before I met him. He left. I see. Atsushi tilts his head. I must have been port mafia too. That look in his eyes when he spoke to me. I wonder if I am even alive in your world. Atsushi doesn't respond. Ah. Well, it's no use dwelling over that. There is the more important question of where you will sleep. Right, Atsushi says. You may room with me. Atsushi blinks. Really? I doubt there will be any comfort rooming with one of the others. You come from a world where they trust you. It won't be easy to have them looking at you with distrust and wariness. You don't know me at all, on the other hand. Right, Atsushi says again. He half wishes he could room with Akutagawa instead. It had only been a few days, but he misses waking up to Akutagawa complaining about something or the other. He misses Jin treating him like their favorite stuffed animal. Where is Akutagawa's sister? Jin? Only the gods know at this point. Jin's missing? Ever since Dazai's death. It isn't difficult for Atsushi to put together the few puzzle pieces he has. Jin's part of the mafia, even though Akutagawa's here. I can't imagine them separated. But you can see yourself and the girl, Kyoka, being from the Port Mafia. Well, in my world, I brought Kyoka here from the Port Mafia, so if the me in this world isn't a detective, it makes sense that she would still be in the Mafia. As for myself, well, I'm only a detective in my world because Dazai found me before someone else did. Had he found me when he was with the Port Mafia, I doubt there would have been any other path for me. You're a good kid, Atsushi, Oda says. Atsushi scoffs. Sure, Akutagawa is making tea when Atsushi enters. Akutagawa watches Atsushi tow his shoes off and almost trip in the process. I wish I'd listened to you. Atsushi pushes the door closed, vaguely registering that Akutagawa says something. It's nothing. Tea. Oh yes, please. Akutagawa brings 2 cups to his table. Atsushi tilts his head as he holds his cup, inhaling the scent of the tea. Listen to me about what? Ah, Akutagawa says, slightly startled. You heard me. Atsushi smiles. I'm a tiger, remember? Akutagawa nods. Well, I hadn't meant to say it, so it is irrelevant. Atsushi studies Akutagawa for a moment. Oh, he says quietly, I'm sorry. What for? It's not your fault. I know, but as much as I'd like to, I can't stay. I don't belong to any of these people. Kyoka likes me a fair bit, but she's waiting for the other me to come back to her. She needs him, not me. I can't stay with you, no matter how much I loved seeing you so alive. I'm sorry for that. Akutagawa traces the rim of his cup, gaze fixed on the motion. I know. I knew from the start that you were not here to stay. It's my own fault. Hey, Atsushi says, waiting for Akutagawa to look up. If there's anything I've learnt thus far, it's that while our lives and circumstances may be different, our souls are the same. Underneath everything, I bet me and him are the same too. If I can love you, maybe he can too, given the opportunity. Akutagawa frowns. How? He thinks we hate each other. Your company was sort of forced on me, then force your company on him the same way. Care about him. Let the agency care about him too. Let him hide behind Kyoka for a while and just give him time. Until he comes back, though, will you stay here? With me? Akutagawa. What if it takes him years to learn? You're setting yourself up for heartbreak like this. Atsushi's lips quirk upwards in a bitter smile. Masochist. Maybe. Akutagawa frowns. You're, glowing. Atsushi rolls his eyes. If you're trying to compliment me, that's a rather weak attempt. No, you're literally glowing. Your pocket. Atsushi glances at his pocket and reaches in to find out what could possibly be it. His fingers brush against paper. The page. Atsushi pulls it out and stares at it for a moment before he looks up at Akutagawa, suddenly realizing something. I don't want to leave. Before Akutagawa can get a word out, Atsushi collapses against the couch. He is no longer holding a page of any kind. Akutagawa gets a fist to the face when Atsushi wakes. He thinks he probably should have expected that, but it still makes him scowl. Wow. Kyoka springs up from the couch and scrambles over to Akutagawa's futon where Atsushi lays. Atsushi? You're awake. Atsushi relaxes almost immediately at the sight of Kyoka. Where are we? What are we doing here? What's he doing here? Akutagawa and Kyoka share an uneasy glance. It's a long story, Kyoka says. There is a knock at the door. Atsushi goes to open it. He stares at the face on the other side of the door for a full 5 seconds before he slams the door shut. He cannot do this again. He cannot get to know another Akutagawa, only to be ripped out of this new world just when he starts to get comfortable. The page, Atsushi thinks. Is it still there in the abandoned building, lying in 2 pieces in the corner? Can it even do anything now that he's ripped it up? The page itself was ripped from the book, but the page was whole up until yesterday. What if he's trapped here because of that? Even if the page still works, what if it leaves this world and Atsushi is stuck? He stumbles away from the door when Akutagawa gives it a hard shove. I don't have time for your bullshit today, Akutagawa snaps, glaring at Atsushi. Get up and get ready, you have places to be. Atsushi stares at Akutagawa, and he continues to stare, and stare, and stare. Because Akutagawa does not wear his usual style of clothing, nor does he wear what the other Akutagawa wore. This Akutagawa wears a suit, a proper suit, a full black suit, with a black shirt and a black tie. He looks good, really good, unfairly good. What are you gawking at? I should get paid double with how often I'm carting you around like some kind of personal assistant. Atsushi wonders what Akutagawa does. He wonders if this Akutagawa will also just know that Atsushi is not whoever this Akutagawa knows. Atsushi clears his throat. When you say I have places to be, where are those places? Akutagawa looks like he's 2 seconds away from skewering Atsushi wherever Rashomon can find flesh. Sometimes, I really want to quit. Atsushi tilts his head. Akutagawa sighs, sounding as tired as Atsushi feels. All right, you need to meet with Kunikida to come up with an explanation for your disappearance yesterday and a strategy to dispel the rumors that you're secretly dying from an obscure and incurable disease. You need to apologize to the rest of the band for ditching everyone the moment the show ended. You need to apologize to Kuyu for covering the costume she created for you in dust and who knows what else. Lucy told me where she found you. You need to meet with Kyoka for lunch, since you took a rain check last week and the week before because of rehearsals. You need to reschedule the shoot today because you're clearly not up for doing it this afternoon. It takes a second for Atsushi to process everything. He's a performer of some kind in this world. God, he hopes he doesn't have to act the part. He doesn't think he has either the guts or the know-how to pull it off. So that's what Kunikida is managing. Atsushi thinks he can safely assume that Kuyu, who is a very terrifying mafia executive where he's from, must be a very terrifying designer here. Lucy must be part of the rest of the band. Atsushi's not sure where anyone else fits in, including Akutagawa. He nods. Okay. I think I'm going to shower first. Akutagawa rolls his eyes. Of all the people, I cannot believe Dazai would be cruel enough to hire me to keep an eye on you. At this point, maybe I'll let a mob accidentally kill you. Lucy had mentioned a bodyguard. Oh, right, Atsushi says slowly. I'm just gonna go take a shower. I'll be back. Atsushi spends half of his shower staring at the wall tiles and wondering how a world like this could seem so mundane to him. He goes through the day in a daze. He hears a lot of things and processes absolutely none of it. He suddenly realizes that he is back in the apartment, seated on the couch, and Akutagawa is snapping his fingers in his face. I asked you if you're sick. Oh, no. Then stop acting like it. You've been out of it all day, and I bet you don't even remember a single thing that happened today. Atsushi shakes his head. Sorry, no. Akutagawa huffs. I am so sick of you. Leave then, Atsushi says before he can think better of it. Why don't you resign, huh? Akutagawa's eye twitches when he glares at Atsushi. Unlike your pretty little stupid pop-punk contract, mine does not have an exit clause. Neither of us can terminate this position. Pop-punk, Atsushi thinks, distracted by that. He wonders what it sounds like. He wonders who sings. Lucy, maybe. She talks like she'd have a beautiful singing voice. Oh, but there was the drums emoji in her name when she called. Lucy, on the drums. Actually, that kind of fits. Atsushi can easily picture Lucy behind a drum kit. He bets she looks really cool on a stage. Maybe she sings and plays the drums. Atsushi wonders who the rest of the band is, given that he has no idea what happened the entire day. Quit spacing out, Akutagawa snaps. God, babysitting you is the worst job I've ever had. I didn't ask you to babysit me, Atsushi snaps back. No, the security firm your label employs did, Akutagawa sneers. I don't know what the fuck is wrong with you, but babysitting you was very heavily implied when part of my written contract included making sure you eat and sleep. Well, isn't that something to consider? This version of Atsushi is a little fucked up too. Why'd you even sign the contract if you hate being around me so much? Atsushi asks with a little more bite than he intended. He is curious, but Akutagawa is pissing him off. I don't have to tell you that, arsehole. Eat your fucking dinner. Atsushi looks at the table, where there is food. Home-cooked? Did Akutagawa cook for him? For someone who's so rude and crass with Atsushi, Akutagawa is bafflingly caring. But that's just Akutagawa's nature, isn't it? Atsushi has met 3 versions of him, and all of them are like that. Prickly and annoying, and a bit of a recluse. But he always cares so much. Akutagawa is painfully human. Atsushi eats. When he's done with that, he goes to bed. He pretends to be asleep, hoping Akutagawa will leave the apartment. Akutagawa doesn't leave. At some point, Atsushi really does fall asleep, and when he wakes up, the apartment is empty. College. Atsushi was dreading this, but there's no escaping it now. He's managed to get out of the far and few rehearsals that have happened by looking like he hasn't slept in 7 months. Akutagawa told Kunikida that Atsushi's been feeling sick, but no one is letting him skip out on classes unless he's actually sick. He now knows that Lucy is on the drums, Tanizaki is on bass guitar, and fucking Chuya is on the lead guitar, but he still has no fucking clue what they're called or what their music even sounds like. He also knows that they're his friends, and Chuya in particular is Akutagawa's friend. Understandable. But that means that Chuya is hovering over Atsushi like a mother hen, because he heard from Akutagawa that Atsushi isn't feeling well lately, which means that Chuya is walking Atsushi to his classes. He supposes he's glad for that in some way. At least he doesn't get lost. Akutagawa would have a field day with that. Actually, Atsushi kind of likes college. There's so many people about that he can forget Akutagawa is always hovering behind him. At least he's not dressed in his usual attire and has chosen to dress like he belongs in a college. Plus, Jin is there. He's missed Jin. He does notice the scowl on Akutagawa's face when Atsushi gives Jin a hug that's probably too tight for friends who last saw each other less than a week ago. But sue him, Atsushi has missed Jin more than he thought he could. Jin shares a couple of classes with Atsushi, so Chuya lets him be for a bit, trusting Jin to keep an eye on Jin. And Atsushi should have seen this coming, because trust the Akutagawa siblings to notice everything and be blunt about it. At least Kyoka, if she noticed, is pretending like she hasn't for Atsushi's sake. So, Jin says when they're seated in the cafeteria after they sent their brother to buy a plate of chips for them, when are you going to tell me what's going on with you? Nothing's going on with me. Atsushi attempts to lie. Bullshit. You have this dazed look in your eyes. You keep glaring at my brother when he's not looking. You haven't answered a single question in any of our classes today, and most importantly, you greeted me wrong. Atsushi tilts his head. Jin was the one who offered him a hug. See, you don't even know what you did wrong. Okay, I'll bite. What did I do wrong? Jin scoffs. Jin, my favorite Akutagawa, your brother's a dick, you say, but you give him this soft, mushy look when he rolls his eyes and looks away. And then you give me half a hug and pat my head and all my other friends stare in seething jealousy because they're not allowed to touch my head. Soft, mushy. Well, that's actually not all that surprising if Atsushi's honest. So, out with it. What's up with you? Atsushi wonders if anyone in this world would even believe the truth. There are no abilities here, so he decides to do something stupid. Do you believe that there are other worlds out there that are similar to our own, where we all exist with different lives to what we have? Jin blinks at Atsushi. Sorry, that was weird. You're from another reality? You believe me? Why? Well, because if you were my Atsushi, you'd already know that I'm leaning into the idea of parallel worlds because we had a good debate about it last month, and also because you didn't believe in it. Bringing it up like this implies that you're not my Atsushi. Also, it explains why you keep glaring at my brother. Do you two fight a lot in your world? Academic rivals. Did I steal your valedictorian position in high school instead of how you managed to keep it, and you decided we're both your mortal enemies, but you still like me because I'm cute and he's all broody? Atsushi's brain glitches and he latches on to the least important thing of their conversation. I went to high school with you? We're the same age. You don't even know how old I am? Jin asks incredulously. What, are we not friends? Atsushi opens his mouth to respond, but his gaze catches Akutagawa approaching. Akutagawa places a box of fries in front of Jin and a wrapped sandwich in front of Atsushi. Eat, he says sternly before leaving. He sits with one of our friends whenever you come to the cafeteria, Jin says, drawing Atsushi's attention back to them. You asked. Well, the other you asked him to at least pretend like he's just another student. Most people don't recognize you without Kuyu's costumes. Who? Jin tilts their head. You don't know who Kuyu is? No, I know, You don't call her that in other worlds. Well, what do I call her then? An-san. Jin giggles. What, like some bad mafia movie? Atsushi gives them a blank stare. Wait, you're serious? Yes, Jin, I'm serious. I don't know how old you are because we barely ever interacted before the world almost ended. Jin stares at Atsushi. What's the world like where you're from? Well, some people have superpowers. We call them abilities. Do you have one? Do I have one? Atsushi shakes his head. You don't, but make no mistake, that doesn't stop you from being one of the most powerful and efficient people I know. I turn into a tiger. Or, Jin says, do you act like a cat sometimes? Atsushi winces, recalling the number of times he's pushed Kunikida's pen holder off the desk. Yeah, that's so cute. Wait, can you still do that here? Atsushi shakes his head. I tried. I miss my tiger. Jin pouts. I'm sorry. It's fine. Well, excluding your tiger, what's your favorite ability? Do you have one? Almost automatically, Atsushi's gaze slides over to Akutagawa, who's quietly listening to whatever it is his tablemate is animatedly talking about. That actually might be Higuchi, Atsushi thinks. What ability does my brother have? Jin asks. Atsushi tears his gaze away and looks back at Jin. She's called Rashomon. She's violent and lethal, but she can also be so gentle. Akutagawa's ability is tied to the clothing he wears. From it he can create, well, anything. Mostly he just uses Rashomon to stab and slice at things, but she's so much more than that. She can devour space itself. She can be both sword and shield. But I like her best when the sentience is more prominent, and this tiny little demonic head of rage pops up over Akutagawa's shoulder. She's surprisingly expressive. She doesn't like it when people touch her. She tries to bite. Akutagawa says she's just a manifestation of how he feels, but I like to imagine that she has her own mind. She does react to how he feels, though, and I think it goes both ways. Akutagawa's face used to relax significantly whenever I petted Rashomon. I thought you said she didn't like being touched, Jin says. Oh, well, no one's really allowed to, but she also doesn't come out just to look around much. Akutagawa mostly brings her out for combat. It's only in the last few days I was in my world that I saw her like that. Oh, I think she likes you. Atsushi scoffs. She has chopped off my limbs several times. Jin's eyes widen. You can regrow your limbs? Atsushi can't help his grin. This Jin reminds him a lot of Rashomon. Prickly and intimidating on the outside, but filled with an almost childlike wonder. He catches himself wondering if maybe Rashomon's not sentient at all and Akutagawa is just projecting his sister into his ability. But he likes believing that Rashomon is sentient, so he'll keep to that. I can, yeah, it's part of my ability. It's handy in combat. That's so cool. Jin rests their head in their palm, elbow on the table, and smiles. I like the way you talk about Rashomon. You look really happy. Atsushi stares down at the sandwich that he hasn't even unwrapped yet. I miss her, he says quietly. I miss my Akutagawa. I'm sure you'll find your way back to your world. If I know my Atsushi as well as I think I do, he'll probably end up kicking you out of his body. Atsushi looks up at Jin. He's dead in my world. Jin freezes up for a moment. Oh, I'm sorry. Every time I look at your brother, all I can think about is how my partner died, and I get so upset that this world exists and it's not mine. Your brother is so alive, and his eyes are so bright. He never had to suffer the way my Akutagawa did. His biggest concern is your college fees, not if he'll even make it to tomorrow. I hate it. I hate it here. I want to leave, but I don't know how. I want to leave before I say something to him that your Atsushi won't ever be able to fix. Jin stares at Atsushi for a long moment. Then they take the sandwich and tear the plastic open before handing Atsushi a half. Well, they say slowly, maybe you ought to tell him, at least so he knows that you're not his Atsushi. So he knows that whatever you say or do, you're not the same person that we know. Atsushi scoffs. I can barely get a word in before we start arguing. Jin shrugs. You have to try harder. I don't really want to, Jin. I've fallen in love with him twice and I've lost him thrice. I can't do it again. I just want out of here. Being here is like being reminded over and over again that he's gone. I can't imagine what that must be like. Jin glances at Akutagawa. I can't imagine losing my brother. I know. You're inseparable in my world. You're the only person he cares about. Jin smiles softly. I'm sure that's not true. He tried to kill me, Jin, Atsushi says deadpan. He lets you pet Rashomon. Well, it's not like either of us gave him a choice. She comes out to meet me. And didn't you say that if Rashomon isn't sentient, she's a manifestation of his feelings? I don't know, Jin. I only got to love him the way I wanted to for a day. What if he was just doing what I asked and lying to me so I'd have something good to remember of him? Look, my belief is that the people in parallel worlds are the same at their cores. I know my brother, Atsushi, and I know that he wouldn't lie like that no matter what happened to him to make him different in another reality. He would. My Akutagawa, he would for me. He'd pretend to love me if I genuinely asked. Jin smiles. Why do you think that is? What do you mean? You say he'd do that for you. Why do you think he would? I don't know. Because he cares about you, dummy. He cares about how you feel. Honestly, if I found out I was going to die tonight, and you told me you've been hopelessly in love with me, I'd spend the day with you. Bullshit. Jin rolls their eyes. I could like men. You barely like anyone. You're missing the point. My brother and I are just like that. When we care about someone, we just want them to be happy. Your brother said he doesn't care about me. We also were born in denial, and if someone like you doesn't come in and fuck everything up, we'd probably die in denial too. Atsushi snickers. You're horrible at this whole comfort thing. Well, you didn't befriend me for my T-tact. Oh, why did I then? I punched a bully in the face because he said you're a wuss. We were in 3rd grade. Atsushi stares at Jin for a moment. He blinks twice. Then he laughs. You know, I think you just made this world a little bearable. Well, Jin says, smiling warmly, feel free to come over and ask for a distraction, or we can talk about your world. I'm very curious about the whole mafia thing you mentioned earlier. Yeah? Yeah. You're my best friend, Atsushi. I want you to be okay. Atsushi returns their smile. Thanks, Jin.
The link to this story is in the description, so please go and read it yourself. And don't forget to give it kudos and let the author know that Hidden Faith sent you. Until next time, dare to be unique.